Gosh, I feel like I've felt every emotion from I started this whole quarantine pandemic with a job and the security of being able to work from home, luckily. And then about 2 weeks into it, I got the call that I was put on furlough. So that was a pretty hard hit. They can't promise when I'll be back or anything like that. So I've just been positively waiting patiently till they call me back. But in the meantime, I feel like, so for the first couple weeks, it was like, yeah, all right, I got this. Super on working out, cleaning my house a million times, rearranging furniture, um, you know, diving right into doing virtual photo shoots and basically anything that I can to stay sane. And then I hit a point where I kind of felt a loss of purpose where, okay, I'm doing all these things, but now what and why and where am I going and when is this going to end? And I'm sure a lot of what everyone has been feeling. And so I had this time where I realized I didn't know how to relax really. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I feel like I need to be doing something. And so I try to channel that energy into a time in my life where I had a lot of this time. And so just changing my perspective on, okay, well, things just aren't normal. So I need to stop thinking about it like I would normally. So I channeled it into times in my life where I had a lot of time, where that was in college and summer, and I didn't have really anything going on, or I'm at home. A lot of the time when I was a kid, I had a lot of time to myself, and that is when I allowed myself to be very creative and find different outlets around the house with whatever I had. So I went back into that mindset a little bit and started just playing around with whatever I had in my house. I started painting again, started doing my own photo shoots, um, reaching out to other designers and artists, and finding ways that we can like connect and still create art, but safely. And so it's just been this emotional roller coaster of a little bit of everything and tapping into parts of my life that I didn't think I'd ever have to revisit again, because it forces you to think differently when you don't have all your tools in front of you. And so I started creating my own toolbox and finding different ways to just keep myself sane and occupied and able to create. So it's been rough. There are moments where I'm sitting here going, and I can't do this. This is awful. This is, I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I want to shout at the world. And then there's other moments where I'm actually super thankful for this, because when do we ever get a time to just stop and think and look inward and not have the pressure of the go 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 and the 9 to 5, and we have to be here and we have to do this and I have to be at that event, and I have to go to this meeting. And so it's I almost kind of feel like, for some it's a very interesting time to be able to reconnect with yourself and maybe the things that you've lost, from fast-paced life that you had before. And I've really liked it in some regards. It's been lonely, but I feel like I've connected more with myself and found different art mediums that I might have lost before.
Well, that's very cool. And sort of on the
Yeah.
topic of creativity, you did mention a couple of things, including painting and self-styled photo shoots. And as far as creative outlet goes, what role has creativity really played in your life, sort of uh, generally in the past, but also like how much has it kind of really amplified in this sort of pandemic time that we've been in?
Yeah, definitely. So all throughout my life, I was the drama nerd growing up. I was a band geek. I definitely loved performance arts, did musical theater, tried to dance, even though I wasn't very coordinated. Um, so it's always been a dream of mine to just perform and use myself as a way to inspire and motivate and get all this energy out that I have inside of me. And so I felt like before I didn't actually realize this, but I wasn't as satisfied as I thought I was. It became more routine art. I had my one scheduled photo shoot a month. Everything was very controlled. I made sure that I still had it in my life, but I felt like the passion and the feeling was gone. And so now, I have no schedule. There is no anything really right now. And so I was able to just kind of look into that and re-find the passion and get more creative and find new ways where instead of, okay, I'm going to go to this photo shoot and do this thing, get in front of a camera, pose. Okay, cool, great. I got pictures I can post. I'm still doing creative things. Now it was more, okay, what really, like, how am I feeling right now? And so I'd just be sitting on the couch watching Netflix, and I'd get really antsy or emotional, or maybe I had a conversation with a friend, and I just felt all these things. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go create art. So actually, my most recent set, I just used LED light strip on the back of my TV and my plant and this little tiny corner, and just started getting really moody and putting myself in it and using the lights in different ways. And I never probably would have done that before this or the pandemic. I never would think I'm going to use the LED light strip on the back of my TV as a light source. In a million years, I don't think I ever would have. So it's been changing my perspective, and it's been pushing me to think outside of the box and to really just be a kid again, and I've been feeling those feelings that I had when I first really got into like performance art, and wanting to get in front of the camera, and it feels really nice. I feel like it was something I lost there for a little bit, just because the day-to-day same routine of society and whatnot.
So at what point did fashion really sort of enter your story? Kind of looking back, you mentioned performing arts, and you love dance and a lot of kinesthetic expressions
Yeah.
of art. At what point did fashion become an important part of your story?
So let's see. It was about 6 years ago. A friend of mine, I met her in college, and she at the time was an international model. She was flying all over the place, doing amazing things. She had called me up and said, hey, there's this local fashion show. We need extra models. Would you like to be a part of it? I was like, heck yeah, that sounds awesome. I've never done a fashion show before. And I didn't really think anything of it. I thought it would just be a one-time experience, just something fun to do, put it on the list and call it good. And I ended up going and just had an amazing time. It blew my mind. I met so many amazing people, so many photographers, and just networked like crazy. People were coming up to me, handing me their cards, like, hey, I'd love to work with you sometime. And I'm like, me? Really? You want to work with me? And so from there, it just kind of, that feeling, it blew up. I followed back with every person that reached out to me and gave their card. And from there, I just started networking until I found people in the local Seattle fashion community, and we're putting on different fashion shows and whatnot. So I started finding auditions, started making connections with different local designers, and making friends with other models. And basically from there, I just kept finding as many opportunities as I could. And I found a way to keep that performance alive. Because with a full-time job, I was working at Google and then Amazon and doing the corporate thing, and it was really hard to go to auditions or keep up musical theater or do local or do that sort of thing and learn lines and stuff. And so fashion and going to events, I still found a way to keep that performance alive and keep that entertainment and that energy. And I fell in love with it after my first show. Being up there and wearing these amazing designs and being able to add the emotion and feeling to the piece that the designer wants, and the reactions from the crowds, and I feed off that energy, and it was amazing. And so after that, I just kept finding opportunity after opportunity. And then 6 years later, I've been in over 20 fashion shows. I was in New York Fashion Week a couple of years ago, and yeah, it's been an awesome time, and I love the Seattle fashion community. It's been great.
So at what point did you transition from modeling to fashion design? When did you first get an interest in doing this stuff for yourself?
So in the back of my mind, I just had these ideas of different designs and dresses and stuff I wanted to make. But unfortunately, I never knew how to sew. And when I was younger, my great grandma taught me how to make jewelry, like beaded jewelry and earrings and these amazing bracelets and necklaces and stuff like that. So I always had a little bit of just accessory creativity from a very young age. And I got to a point in my modeling where I mean, I still love it. It's still, I'm very more choosy now in what I decide to do, but I wanted to learn more. I wanted a different creative outlet. And it didn't actually really come until almost 2 years ago, July 21st, I decided to go sober from alcohol. And this had been a long time coming and something that I really needed to do to be able to progress in my life. And out of that, I went to my first party a couple weeks after I decided to quit. And I was extremely nervous. And I realized I was using alcohol as a social lubricant. And so I'm at this party, super awkward, I'm all introverted. And I realized, I'm like, it's so hard to talk to people. And I'm standing in the kitchen and there's this woman wearing this amazing body chain piece. I'd never seen anything like it before. And I'm like, ooh, great talking piece. So I go up to her, I'm like, hi, where did you get this amazing piece? And she's like, oh, I made it. I'm like, you made that? I was like, how did you make that? So she told me she got some supplies from like Home Depot and somewhere. And it was this gorgeous kind of industrial silver chain with a little loop. And it fit her body super nicely. And it was very captivating. So that weekend, I went and got the materials and tried to recreate that piece. And then while I was doing that, all of these ideas just kind of burst in my head. And so after that, I just started making chain after chain and finding different materials and stuff to use. And then I started wearing them out and people were like, oh, where did you get that? I'm like, oh, I made it. And they're like, can I buy it? And I'm like, I never thought of that, but sure, I guess. And then just seeing people's reactions and whatnot, and how I felt, I wanted to give that back to people. So that's where Kilvani Designs came out of, my first brand.
That's very cool. And so what's really interesting to me is you said, please forgive me, the audio cut out just a little bit, but it sounded like your mother or your grandmother is the one who was the original jewelry designer. Was that right?
Yeah, my great grandmother.
Great.
We used to,
Okay.
yeah, great grandmother. She's super artistic in the jewelry. I mean, she can make anything and everything, crochets. And so when I was younger, my grandparents, I grew up with my grandparents. We used to go on like month-long trips to Arizona and hang out in the desert. And so my great grandma would bring all these creative supplies and we would just sit there, just make jewelry for hours and give them out to the people in the campsites and whatnot. And so it was really fun. And then as I got older, I just kind of lost that. I didn't really keep it a part of my life really. But yeah, I refound that.
So it's almost like this spirit, that sort of family spirit is alive in your brand. It's a very touching story. And it's really amazing to hear that you've recreated or you've reconnected with that creativity. And, I'd love to spend maybe just another minute and talk about creativity. And where do you pull your influences from?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of it is just from things that I see in life, whether it's someone's bathing suit or just someone's body shape or just different. I take a lot from symmetrical shapes and different things like that. So honestly, I get just a lot from just life. I do look for inspiration pieces from other designers. A lot of lingerie influences, body cage styles, things that I think will fit the human body very nicely when it comes to different like more skin showing pieces. But then also I try to create versatile pieces where not only does it have to just be with less clothing, but I try to find designs that can wear with little black dresses or jumpsuits. I've worn a lot of my pieces to the office. I get a lot of customers like, oh, I could never, wear that unless I had a lingerie piece or, on a nude body. I'm like, oh, no. You can wear this literally wherever you want. And so I want to create something that offers, people to use it whenever they want.
Well, that's very, very cool. I love the idea of taking it to the office because, well, in the corporate structure, it's very difficult because there's quite a lot of HR rules about what you can and can't wear, especially in certain industries. And some of them have to do with the health and safety of the employees if you're working around machinery or anything like that. But
Oh, yeah.
some of the rules can be quite restrictive and just to editorialize outsiders' opinion. They don't make a lot of sense all the time. So anything that we can do to sort of express ourselves within those corporate confines, I think is a very, very positive thing for everyone.
Oh, yes.
It spruces up the workplace. It's a conversation starter, like you mentioned, but it's also a really great way of not just standing out, but really, really standing up and
Hmm.
saying, "Hey, this is me, and this is what I'm about." And not to put words into your mouth, I apologize, but
No, I 100% agree. When I first started making my chains and wearing them to the office, it would be funny seeing people's reactions. There would be kind of the double takes of, wait, what is that? What is she wearing? Or, women would come up to me and, what is this? And I'd take my blazer off and, they'd see that it's this whole jewelry piece. And they're like, what is that? I'm like, oh, you can try it on. And we'd have a little, fashion corner. And then it spread like wildfire. Women started coming up to me and asking about my pieces and actually like ordering custom pieces off from me, and it was just really cool because I'm definitely someone who I do the job well. I've done the corporate thing for a very long time and I still am, but I 100% believe in keeping, your sense of self wherever you go. And I don't believe that you need to really change for a job or have a job change you. And so that it actually wearing those pieces made me feel comfortable around the office. Because like you were right, saying that there's certain, restrictions on what you can wear or depending on the nature of your job and that sort of thing. Sometimes your job just will confine you in a certain, uniform or something like that. And so wearing these pieces, it gave me a sense of just kind of self and, having those bad days and, feeling the 9 to 5 grind. And then, I'd go in the bathroom and look in the mirror. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. This is me. This is my piece. This is who I am. And, walking around with a little bit of extra confidence really helped.
oh, for sure, for sure. I'd like to take a second and shift gears just slightly and talk about sort of your brand, not necessarily the entire brand story, but in particular, kind of the brand persona and sort of who your target market is and who you design for. And a lot of feedback I usually get from people sounds something like, "Well, I design for everyone, and it's transition wear, and you can wear it here, you can wear it there." But on the more granular, who do you see wearing your pieces?
Yeah, so this is actually something I'm still figuring out as I'm creating my brand. Like you said, unfortunately, I tried to start too big and created for everyone. But then I noticed a lot of my customers were, I would say, more, teen, for festivals, spring breaks, summer wear, that sort of thing. And all the way up until, I would say, late 30s, early 40s age range in between there. But again, my being an accessory piece, it is very versatile. And so, I mean, it doesn't have an age on it. A lot of people try to put an age on it, but I like to break that. And, anyone can really wear these pieces. But I would say my biggest crowd would be more fashion, the models, using it as a statement piece. If you're having a night out or you're going to some big event and you just need something on your body that just says, wow, to accommodate whatever other piece you're wearing, or, going to that summer festival or, anything like that. Just, it's really an outfit enhancer. And so, yeah.
As it should be. That's what makes it fashion. So, and for people that may not have context, we're saying accessories. It is jewelry, and this is typically things that do cover a significant amount of the form. So upper torso, décolletage. These aren't necessarily full body pieces. They're not suits. It is jewelry, and I am curious if you have any plans or if you had any thoughts. To make a bit more formal jewelry like rings or bracelets or maybe bangles or necklaces or earrings, anything like that?
Not at this time. I have thought about it. The thing that I like the most, well, I'm actually transitioning into making more like full-on chain body pieces. So one of my biggest projects that I've been starting is making a full-on chain dress. And I have this chain armor piece, and eventually I'm going to be making two sides where they fit completely over the arms. So definitely a lot more in your face fashion statements, more bigger, grandiose pieces. It's going to be a lot of work, but I like to go big.
Well, that's also fashion. Go big or go home, right? So, well, kind of the last question I did have on the topic of creativity, we sort of talked about early experiences, and we talked about where you kind of pull your influences from, and sort of the contemporaries in the field that you respect and admire, although we didn't name them, but that's okay too. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for, especially in this time, we're looking at opening up the state here just in a couple of weeks. It's
Mm-hmm.
May 28th here that we're doing the recording. June 1st, and I believe it's June 1st, it looks like phase 2 is going to start opening up for more businesses in Washington State. And this means that, photographers can open for business if they have a fixed location. Showrooms, which had been closed, can as well, as long as they're following COVID guidelines. And salons, everything. This is very good news for everyone that's had so much of their livelihood, income, and their sort of their state of mind taken from them in a lot of ways. So I'm curious, sort of looking forward, within maybe the next 6 to 8 week window, what does it look like for you personally, Jessica, and also what does it look like for your brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely something I've been thinking a lot on. For me personally, I am hoping to get that call back on my job. So right now I'm basically going to just keep working and taking advantage of the time that I have to work on my personal projects, filling customer orders that I have currently. And I do have a couple fashion shows in mind, actually, that I recently got asked to participate in as a designer. So one of my biggest projects that I'll be starting this week, actually, is to create a couple new pieces and a new direction for my brand for those fashion shows. So that's something I'm really excited for. And yeah, that will be taking up a lot of my time. And then I have a couple other projects on the side that I don't want to discuss yet, but I'm really excited for it. It'll be a video series. And so right now I'm learning video editing and a whole different side of the camera that I've never really worked with before. So that will also be keeping me very busy. So actually this interview right now is helping me prep for that too. So.
Oh, absolutely. And the good news is you're definitely the type of person for whom this access to knowledge, the rubber sort of hits the road. You can put it right to use. And you've always been very entrepreneurial in that way. You're an extremely intelligent person. I've respected you over the time that I've gotten to know you, and
Thank
I look
you.
very forward to the future of what you have in mind. I'm very curious to hear about this fashion show, and I'm obviously curious about this secret that you're now keeping from all of us. So I don't know if you can talk about that, but I'm very curious about that. But
No, it'll be good. I'm very excited. This has been a long time coming. I've been thinking about it for years, and there's this thing called fear that I know we all suffer from at times, and I've had a lot of time to think about why I haven't just kicked myself in the butt and went forward with this project. And finally, it took a lot of getting over some anxiety, and I tend to be, as I'm sure a lot of us artists are, a perfectionist. So I try to perfect things before I even start, in my mind. And so I realized for a while that was keeping me from starting this project. And so finally I had to battle that. And I'm like, this is new territory. This is something I've never done before, but I'm pretty sure I can do it and it'll be fun. So I finally did. And it's been frustrating as hell, but it'll be super rewarding at the end. I hope anyway.
I can definitely empathize. And in my world, I've been following Chase Jarvis for a bit now, and I think on the topic of perfectionism, I'm the same way. And it honestly it crippled me in my academic studies because I thought if I can't get an A, then I'm not going to try. And I couldn't develop a coping mechanism or have a support system that got me out of that because I could have been not to say that I'm not well educated. I definitely had opportunities that I'm very grateful for, but I could have been significantly less of a screw up had I had access to some of these tools that it took me a half a lifetime to learn. But
Hindsight's 2020.
well, yeah, but you bring up on the topic of procrastination. I really love that. For me, in my life, it was Chase. Just following the digital feeds, saying, don't worry about getting it perfect. Ship it, get it out there, get it done, and it's probably going to suck, and that's okay too. And the point here is that you're doing it, and following the advice, sort of I don't, not to necessarily plug his book, but I've really connected with it. Where in his book Creative Calling, he sort of lays out this plan. It's kind of like every day you have a creative practice, and here's what it kind of looks like, and here's sort of a methodology, and the point being that it's like a muscle and you have to work it out every day. And if you don't, it does stagnate. And it's why so many of us might go for years. And it's like, oh my God, I forgot that I could do this thing. And then we reconnect with it and then develop a daily practice. It's like exercising, working muscles out. Suddenly we're right back to where, if we hadn't taken all this time off, just imagine the output that we could have had, the difference that we could have made.
No. I think
So, and that's not a guilt trip, and not to editorialize, but I think this is what so many of us struggle with. Just what is it going to take for us to get started? Is the fear and the anxiety holding us back? Yeah. What's the answer to that? To hoist a rather large middle finger in the face of our fear and do it anyway, and
exactly.
that's courage. So I just. Sorry to editorialize a bit, but I feel very passionately about that, and I think it might be coming across.
I do too. Yeah, mind. What is it? You are not the mind. You are the observer of your mind. So if your mind wants to freak out and tell you can't, and start saying all these monologues in your head, well, that's great. I can't, but you are not that, and you can push forward. And that's probably my hardest lesson I've been trying to keep telling myself over and over during this quarantine period.
As are we all.
Yeah.
Well, I did want to sort of end our discussion today on the topic of health and wellness. And, you brought up a lot of really key things that I think are very helpful for people because we're all in this together, and we're all kind of working through this isolation and this strandedness and this feeling of general hopelessness and malaise. And one of the things that I'd love to be able to do with Seattle Fashion Collective is not just say, hey, here's a bunch of cool fashion, which is great, of course, don't get me wrong, but to say, we really are a community. We're a diverse community, and we're a strong community, and we're a resilient community. And we've got a ton of stuff that we're slogging through at the moment, but we're going to get through it because, damn it, we're going to put one foot in front of the other, come hell or high water. And we're going to come through the end of this stronger than we were when we started. And
hell yeah.
And so right off the bat, you can see that I obviously have a bit of an agenda, but I'm hopefully allowing us all to sort of share it in our own words, and to really connect with the strength that we have inside of us. And I'm curious, you did mention a lot of things like previous history with alcoholism, previous history with anxiety, and a bit of depression. And I've known you, so I'm not really outing you, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. But
no, not at all.
I am curious, what sort of tactics and what tools and what modalities have you been implementing in this time to really combat that and to try and reclaim your life and reclaim that sense of purpose?
Definitely. So this quarantine time has definitely challenged my sobriety. Definitely anxiety has been at an all-time high. not being able to have as many distractions. And I realized before, kind of in my previous pre-quarantine life, a lot of the go, 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 and always being constantly busy, basically filling up any extra time that I had doing either project or work or an event or something, was as a way to kind of hide the anxiety that I was having. Because if you're always busy, you don't have as much time to think about it. And I have all the time to think about it. And when I was younger and I was going through some tough times as a child, my grandmother had me write anything down all the time, just even scribble. It didn't have to make sense. It was if I was feeling something or had anxiety, to just write it down, crumple up, and throw it away. And throughout my life, I had kind of got away from journaling and writing. And I know for a lot of people, it's extremely powerful to do that. And so I was doing some yoga. So I've turned definitely into a workaholic or workoutaholic during this quarantine. One, it helps the mind. That is one thing that has helped a lot with just my anxiety and the sobriety, is if I have any just downtime and I find myself thinking about that, well, I'm going to go do something healthy for myself, whether that be yoga, stretching, or a home workout. And one of the times I was doing the home workout, I found myself, my face was wet. And then I realized I was crying. I was like, why? I was just crying out of nowhere. And normally I would try to push myself through it. I'm like, no, there's no reason to cry right now. Like, you're fine, you're strong, you got this. But I'm like, what if I just let myself feel this feeling for a second and go through it? And so I just laid there and I cried and I cried and I cried. And it felt so good. And then I had this thought, wait, I have tons of unused journals. Well, I'm going to go write. So after I had that moment to myself, I went and I just wrote, and I wrote down everything that I'd been thinking and feeling, and used that as a way to work through a lot of this stuff. And it was so freeing. It felt so good. And I'm like, wow, why have I not done this in a while? And so I just started finding, things like that and reconnecting again. Like I said, having this time to just kind of rethink about how did I, go through these battles in different ways at other times in my life. And it's still relevant. Like, even though I'm not that, 6-year-old girl that used to write down, I can still write today. And it has the same effect and same feeling. And so that was really important to me. Definitely have a really hard time reaching out to people. I'm sure I know a lot of people struggle with this. I'm extremely stubborn, and I believe that, I can be self-reliant and I can overcome anything. But this time, I have really been trying to, if I feel something or I need to talk through something, just really reaching out. So this quarantine time has really been important for me in just flexing old habits and trying to create new healthy habits, and realizing that you don't have to do everything by yourself. And I think I've been faced with that more now, not being able to go out and see people. Because even though I would be out and hanging out with people and having conversations, I may not necessarily be asking them for help or looking to them for something, but just being around them and having that, it would give me that same sort of just kind of comfort. But now that I don't have that, I had to find different ways to get that. And so it's been hard. It's been scary, but I like to think it's been helping me a lot. The sobriety thing, though, it'll be 2 years in July. And this is the first time that I've really been thinking about wanting, if I'm at a point where I could drink by myself. And I'm not really sure what brought me to do it, but I did actually have a weak moment, and I ended up drinking a couple weeks ago, and 1 turned into 3, turned into me blacking out. And I haven't done that in almost 2 years. And there was one other time in my sobriety that I had slipped up. And I looked my friend in the eye. We were out at a party, and I said, "Do not let me drink again." And after that moment, I didn't have any more drinks. But from that one drink, now it had always been in the back of my mind. And so I always had questions. Can I learn control? Can I learn to just have one? You know, do I have the strength right now to where I can stop that? And well, it was 2 a.m. and I've had really bad sleeping habits because I have nothing needing me to wake up super early. So I've been up until like 2 or 3, like every day for the past month. And I don't know, it was just one of these nights where I just got really antsy and I was sitting there. I was like, oh, I can't go to bed. I also suffer from back pain. So I was just in a lot of pain and I couldn't find any reprieve. I couldn't find anything that would make me feel better. And so I thought, well, maybe just one drink will put me to, get me in a headspace where I can maybe fall asleep. Well, it did the complete opposite. I actually ended up getting more energy. And as soon as I started feeling that buzz, my body just wanted more and more. And so I woke up the next morning, didn't remember how I went to sleep or anything. And I hadn't had a hangover in almost 2 years, and it was the worst feeling in the world. And I wanted that day to completely go away. And so I laid there, I nursed my hangover, I slept all day. The next day, I still felt super out of it. I had major anxiety. I didn't want to talk to anybody. But then after that, I said, this is not me. I had a weak moment. I'm not defined by this moment. It's been 2 days. I think I'm starting to feel a little better. Let's go on a workout. And I just started my routine again and didn't look back. And, there's moments where I find myself trying to get down on me for having that weak moment. But, it's a hard time right now. And, we're human and we all make mistakes. And I haven't, drank since. I've thought about it. But I'm going to make it to my 2 years and I'm going to make it beyond that. But I learned a very important lesson that, I think it will be something that I won't, be able to have in my life. It's just, whatever effect it has on me, whether I'm by myself, whether I'm in a controlled situation, it will always be a crutch for me. And so even though I had a down moment, I learned a lot from it. And so that question that was burning in the back of my mind, I answered it. So no more alcohol still for me.
Well, it ultimately is a very good decision, not just for your health and wellness. It's also a financially good decision. There's a lot of upsides
Yes.
for this as well, and especially when you're talking about reconnecting with yourself and sitting with that pain and sort of sitting with that emotion and allowing that self-awareness and to really inform who you really are, those things we sort of stuff down deep inside. And a lot of creatives will say, I need that pain because that's sort of my fuel for my art. And I thought that for a very long time. And I would push back against that hard and say, well, if it's the pain that's fueling your art, who's the artist? You are the pain. And what is it that you're really trying to say? And I think about that quite a lot now. Whatever your medium is, and however you identify as an artist, whether you're a painter or a photographer, fashion designer, a writer, whatever it is, what is it that you're really trying to say? And kind of on that topic, my last question for you today is I think a very pointed one for that reason. And I try to think of it in this way: if I was going to die tomorrow, not to get too morbid, I've been saying this a lot for those that are watching.
I have too, weirdly, actually.
It's sort of that's my stoic approach to how I, it's what I've adopted to help me. That's how I move forward in life. But if I was going to die tomorrow, who would I reach out to and what would I say? And so my question for you is, if you had a message that you can give to anyone, just put it out there into the universe, what would it be?
Ooh, it's a good question. Oh, that's hard because I would have multiple messages. The first thing that came to mind is my grandmother. So my grandparents adopted me when I was 2 years old, and they didn't have to. My grandma had been raising kids her entire life, and I know it was quite a strain on her in our marriage. Basically, as soon as she married my grandfather, they were always having to take care of kids in the family. And she, I would probably not be here today if it was not for them taking care of me. And I know my grandma, she is who I get a lot of my strength from. And she carries the weight of the world on her back. And she's like the nicest, caring woman I've ever met. We definitely had our differences and struggles growing up, and I tried to fight her every way of it. But as I got older and as an adult and could see just what they were doing for me and how much love that they had for me, I mean, I owe them so much. And my grandma really is, when I get asked questions like, who's your hero or this, like she's without a doubt in my mind the first person that comes to mind. And so the message I would want to give her is that, I feel like a piece of her is now able to live through me. She's also a free spirit. She loves just people and always tries to see the good in every situation. And even though she has been put in some hard situation, she still pushes forward. And I would want her to know that, she's amazing. She did the best that she could. And like, I'm a reflection of that. I mean, I'm definitely my own person, and I, take what I've learned and I make it my own, but she put that foundation there. And I mean, I'm forever grateful. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do or have the opportunities or think the way I was if it wasn't for her. I mean, I have no idea what kind of life I would have if it wasn't for them. And so, yeah, my message would just be that she, as much as I think she questions and gets on herself and whatnot, and, if she made the right decisions, and, as we all kind of look back on our lives and we question a lot of things, that, there's one thing that I know that she did right, and it was me.